Good morning, Husker fans. We are live here on the Husker Big Red YouTube channel, so thanks for following us here on Facebook and YouTube. Sorry, we're a few minutes late. Got into the wrong room here, had some technical difficulties, big surprise, but we are here to talk some Nebraska football. We're going to look back at the spring. We're going to talk some recruiting and basically whatever else you guys, would like to talk about. So if you're joining us on YouTube or Facebook, thanks for hanging out. Make sure you join the chat. If you haven't already, make sure that you hit subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, get into the comments section so you can talk some Husker football with us and that you don't miss any of our future content. So, Danny, how are you on this Saturday morning, man?
I'm doing good. It's raining, so it's kind of a bummer, but I'm doing good otherwise.
Yeah, it's a rainy day here in Montana too. So isn't a big day for your? Is it game 3 today for your Celtics
It
or?
is. They got to win, or else I think the series is done.
Yeah, it's been a rough go of it so far, but James says good morning. So go Big Red, James. It's basketball playoffs. We got baseball rolling, recruiting, spring football. Finished up with Nebraska a couple weeks ago. Of course, the Big Ten tournament didn't necessarily go the way we wanted it to yesterday, with the Huskers losing out to UCLA. But oh well. Nebraska will still be making the NCAA tournament, so we'll find out their destination tomorrow. I think the selection shows 6 p.m. Central Time on ESPN2 for any softball fans out there.
Actually, I might watch that because there's a lot of good teams this year, and Nebraska is one of them. They just ran into a buzzsaw yesterday.
Yeah, the UCLA offense is really good. And they had, in the 6th inning, I think it was the bottom of the 6th, they had a ball that almost was a 3-run homer. I can't remember who was batting at the time. I think it was Hannah Kamenzen. But anyway, so it was just like a foot away from tying the game up, and then they weren't able to get the run across. UCLA added an insurance run. Wasn't the best performance from Jordy Ball, this season, but it is what it is. I don't know if Michigan or if Nebraska would have won the tournament if they would have gotten to host a regional. I mean, it would have been close, but they'll probably go in somewhere as a number 2 seed, and I think they're still a pretty dangerous team. They got the Big Ten pitcher, the Big Ten Player of the Year, and softball pitching matters a heck of a lot. So we'll see,
Yeah,
what Jordy Ball can do in her first postseason as a Husker.
yeah, and she's always exciting to watch, and like you said, she's Big Ten Player of the Year, Pitcher of the Year, and anytime you have Player of the Year on your team, you've always got a shot. So I mean, overall they've had a really good season, and sometimes when you get matched up in these tournaments, you play the best of the best, and that's what happened yesterday. And I still have confidence in this team, for sure.
At least the baseball team got a good win last night, so they're back to 500 after they lost to Creighton. They just can't seem to build, a ton of momentum. But I feel like, if they win this series, I said this in one of my previews, I think, but if they could win 2 games this weekend, which would be a series win or a sweep over Michigan, which is another team that's kind of on the NCAA tournament bubble, I think that could maybe, give them a chance. But the loss to Creighton on Tuesday did not help, though, in terms of their, at large chances of making the NCAA tournament.
It's kind of interesting where they are now compared to where they were a year ago. I mean, they got hot around this time last year, and that was not largely due to pitching, but a lot of it was because of pitching, and now that's an area where they've seemed to struggle this year. So, who knows? This team has been hard to read. Like you said, they've kind of struggled to build any momentum. But come postseason tournament, late season, anything can happen. So I still have hope for this team too.
And yeah, Tucker Timmerman, who got his first start last night, just 1 run in 7 innings. So, I guess, he's pitched before this season. I'm not sure if that was his first start, but it was kind of like his first Friday start. They kind of moved him into that position, and he did really well there. So we'll see how the other guys do. Ty Horn's going to pitch today, and then I think Jackson Brockett on Sunday. So we'll see. But you face Michigan's ace on Friday night, Kurt Barr. He's been pretty good this year, and Nebraska got a win. So I would say that was a huge start for them to beat, Michigan's best pitcher, especially, this team hasn't had their, if they had Mason McConaughey, this would be a whole different
Yeah.
season. And I know it's just one injury, but in college baseball, losing your Friday night starter is a huge deal. I mean, you really can't overstate how big of a loss that is. That's probably the one injury you would not want to sustain. I mean, like A position player would hurt a lot too, but losing your best starting pitcher who's going to go up against the other team's best starting pitcher every Friday night, like that really does hinder you as a baseball team. So they've bounced back pretty well, I guess, after having to deal with that.
Yeah, it's still the inconsistency is frustrating, and I know, like you said, they battled through a lot, but I would have liked to have seen him win that Tuesday game against Creighton. That would have been big, but it is what it is, and now I have a chance to make the most of a weekend. So,
yeah, so let's talk some football, I guess. Spring ball has been wrapped up now for a couple of weeks, but they've got a lot of the post-spring top 25s coming out, and I don't know, I thought it would be an interesting discussion just to look at, who on this team really improved their stock, and during this spring. And we can start, offensively and kind of go from there. But on the offensive side of the ball, who were some guys that stuck out to you this spring, just from either highlights, things you read, or just positive buzz in general?
Cortez Mills, he was a guy that has been talked up a lot this spring, and I think he has an opportunity to maybe not start day one, but definitely play in his freshman season. Although I don't think saying he can potentially start, maybe not day one, but again, at some point this season is not out of the question. I don't think there's going to be a redshirt year for him necessarily.
No, it's going to be, yeah, he could be starting. I think there's a very real chance. And I mean, it depends how many guys there's a lot of technical starters, depending if you have 2 tight ends starting the game or 3 wide receivers or whatever. But yeah, there's been a ton of buzz about him, and I think he's going to make an immediate impact, sort of like Ja'Cory Barney did last year, but I would say it's going to be a bigger impact. I think we'll see more explosive plays from Cortez Mills than we did from Barney last season, just based on the offense. And there's other weapons, and defenses really were focused in on Barney last year, just the way that they sort of utilized him. And I think that'll be harder to do. So it does seem to me that Ja'Cory Barney does get lost in the mix a little bit, just because of Dane Key and Isaiah Hunter and Cortez Mills and all the buzz about those guys. But don't sleep on Ja'Cory Barney, man. I think he's poised for a big second season too.
That's a damn good wide receiver room too. When you look at it, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a lot of talent there.
And then, so I guess one of the guys I really like that I think raised his stock this spring was Heinrich Harburg. Not that it was really down or anything. I just think getting the chance to play tight end and kind of focus on one position has really helped him. And so I feel really good about him and Luke Lindenmeyer. Hopefully Carter Nelson can be healthy and contribute this season, but it seems like that, I don't know, it almost feels like that would be gravy at this point. I think they could certainly use a guy like Carter Nelson, but I don't know if they necessarily, not I don't want to say need him, but I think they can survive without him this season if they have to.
Justin Evans Jenkins is a guy that comes to mind here when we talk about risers. I mean, Dana Holgerson said he was the starting center as of that day in his press conference at the time. I think it was the second week of April. So, I mean, he's an offensive lineman that I've always liked, and replacing Ben Scott is certainly not an easy thing to do. I thought Scott was very dependable, very solid. So Justin Evans Jenkins definitely saw his stock rise this spring.
Yeah, and that was one of the question marks, who was going to lock down the center job. And I know Sam Sledge was also kind of competing there. And, I'll say Quentin Ives too, because Matt Rule at the start of the spring said, we feel good about our running backs, but this is a big spring for them. I know that they did go after Shamar Brown, but I don't think that was necessarily an indictment of Quentin Ives. It just, he was a local kid, and I think it was just kind of one of those situations where they were like, hey, if we can add another back to this room, we want to do it. But I don't think it was out of like a concern for Quentin Ives, talent or production. I think he really, Holgerson and everybody really kind of said that he's the RB2, and I think he's had a solid spring, and he's really taken that mantle. So, in terms of who's going to get the most carries this season, it's going to be Emmett Johnson and it's going to be Quentin Ives, and we'll see how that works out.
Yeah, I feel confident in this running back room. I know a lot of people wanted to get a transfer portal running back, but I feel confident in this group, and I'm very excited to see what Emmett Johnson can, what he can do in an expanded role with a competent offensive coordinator, I guess. because there were times last year I thought he should have been given the ball more, and when he was given the ball, he showed playmaking ability and explosiveness. So I'm excited to see what Emmett can do this year.
And yeah, let's see. Defensively, I'm trying to think about guys that, kind of stood out to me. I think that Riley Van Poppel, at least from the very, had a solid spring. I mean, I heard some good things about him. He obviously came in, with the size and the speed or the weight. They didn't add any defensive linemen. We thought maybe that would be a possibility. So it's going to be, Riley Van Poppel, Elijah Judy, Keanu Davis, another guy I think that had a strong spring. Williams Noeri, and maybe I would have liked to have heard more about him, but I do think that people need to temper expectations a little bit on Williams. I hope he contributes this season. I think he will, but I don't think he's going to come in and be get 4, 5, 6 sacks this year. I think he still has some time to develop.
Where do you think Cam Leonard fits in all this?
Yeah, Cam Leonard, I think he's going to be a crucial player this year. I think he'll be a starter essentially. It's so hard to look at Nebraska's defensive line and name who the starters are because it's just so different. Whether it's a rundown or like a pass down. But I mean, if you're looking at like a 3-man line, probably. I would say probably Riley Van Poppel is going to be in there. I would say Keanu Davis is going to be in there, and maybe it might be Cam Leonard as the third guy. As the other end. I think Noeri probably would be in the mix a little bit there too, and Elijah Judy. Elijah Judy can play kind of both of those spots, but I feel like Cam Leonard's going to be a starter this season. Basically, I think that we will view Keanu Davis, Cam Leonard, and Riley Van Poppel as starters this season, and maybe Elijah Judy to a similar, but to a lesser extent, is like more of a rundown starter, if you get what I mean. And then that's kind of how I see it. That's kind of how I see that group playing out. What are your thoughts on the D line?
I like the defensive line. I would have liked a little bit more depth, as you said, but I'm expecting a big year from Keanu Davis. I liked what I saw last year from him in the action that he had, and I feel very confident with Terry Braden leading the helm. I feel like he's a very good coach. He was out on the recruiting trail this past week too, so I'm very excited to see how Terry kind of adds his style to the room. I was worried about losing Terrence Knighton at the time, but I think Braden is going to be a fine replacement.
Yeah, and we'll see if some other guys, Gabe Moore, if he can work his way into the mix. I mean, there's some other players on the defensive line. Malcolm Simpson's coming in. It'll be interesting to see. I don't expect a huge season from him, but I do want to see him, come in and take positive steps, because I feel like him and Tyson Terry are guys that need to contribute probably in a big way next year. I don't think Nebraska necessarily needs them this year, but those guys do need to, I think, take that kind of step. And so I would like to see them get some playing time eventually, just to, get their feet wet. And I just feel like guys that play have a better chance to play better their sophomore season, even if it's not a ton, even if it's like, some garbage time or a semi-competitive, situation. I feel it's like getting your feet wet, especially for defensive linemen, I think is a good thing. So we'll see how those guys develop, but I don't really expect much from Malcolm Simpson or like Tyson Terry, this season. I am really excited about the linebacking core, though. Dason McCullough has me really excited. Vincent Shavers, Willis McGahee the fourth, Dawson Merritt, Marquez Watson Trent. It's a loaded.
Yeah.
I would say the linebacking group is the wide receiver of the defense, that group, because I would say that group is probably the deepest and probably the most talented on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, and you can do so many things with the linebackers, like McCullough, Shavers, and McGahee, for example, can all rush the passer, and then you have guys like Watson Trent who can stop the run and be a good run stuffer. So the versatility in the linebacker room is something that's really impressive as well.
Yeah, and Javin Wright too is another really good player. So I mean, yeah, they're really set at linebacker, and it'll be interesting to see how much Christian Jones and Dawson Merritt play, because I don't know how much they're going to be needed this season. And so, it's kind of a double-edged sword, because you want your highly touted freshmen to play, but you also don't want them to have to play. It's kind of one of those things where, but then you also, you don't want guys to have to sit too long because then they could be looking at the portal. So I don't know. It's a delicate dance that coaches have to do. But I do think I think those guys will probably get on the field some, and they can probably help on special teams. But it's hard for me to see either of them having a regular role this season unless they're way better than I expected, which in that case would be a bad thing either.
No, and we've been wrong once or twice, so I'm hoping we're wrong there. But yeah, I'm really excited about the linebacker room, and I'm excited about the secondary. Like I said, Andrew Marshall's a guy that I'm really excited about, and I'm excited about John Butler. I think John Butler will do great things for this defense, and he has the reputation of being able to develop players, and I think, I wasn't really too concerned about losing Tony White last year, and I think Butler will be a fine replacement.
Yeah, it'll be speaking of guys who, with rising stock, I think there's some in the secondary, with that Donovan Jones, Amari Sanders. It'll be interesting to see how John Butler develops a lot of these guys, Mario Buford, Caleb Benning. I mean, there's, like you said, Andrew Marshall's more of a proven guy, but still, like, how can John Butler take him to the next level?
Larry Tarver.
Larry Tarver. And, he did a heck of a job with Sayre Wright last year, and Sayre Wright came in here super late, barely before fall camp, and
Middle of June, yep.
Yeah, was one of Nebraska's best defensive players. So I mean, that's another guy, like, he's going to have a full off season working in this defense. Like, I feel like he's poised for a huge season. I'm not going to say like, oh, I think he could, project his way into like being a first round pick, but I definitely think Sayre Wright could be, a day 2 pick for the Huskers, in the next NFL draft, like, for sure.
Yeah, no, I can totally see that as well. And I don't think we're overhyping him too much. I think he's a really good corner. I'm not honestly sure, how we were able to land him that late, because he's very talented, but I'm excited to see him, and I'm excited to see the identity that the secondary takes on, because I feel like they didn't really have an identity last year. So I'm excited to see how that kind of transpires.
Yeah, I think they're going to have 3. I think the top 3 corners are going to be Jones, Marshall, and Wright. So, you look at those 3 guys, and I feel like some pretty good man coverage skills there. So, I know Marshall played in the Big Sky Conference, an FCS conference, but, they kind of had a nickname. I can't remember what it was, but it was like a moniker for him, kind of like Revis Island, but like, Marshall's Island. And that's how good this guy was in that conference. Now that's a step up. And so I don't expect him to be that dominant, but I still think he can be a very good, like, number 2 corner. And Jones I think he really impressed me in that Pinstripe Bowl game. I know it's just Boston College, but they have some really good players on that team. And one guy who's from Montana, and Donovan Jones ended up guarding him quite a bit, and Reed Harris, and he totally shut him down. And that guy had, down the stretch, I think he had like 3 or 4 games in a row with like a 40-yard reception. So, I mean, you put guys out on an island and they held up pretty well. So I think those are going to be the top 3 corners. And then Singleton, I think Buford and Hartzog will be the safeties. And, I feel pretty good about, that group of 6 defensive backs.
I feel like the safeties are actually where they're supposed to be and not at the corner position. I feel like Buford fits much better as a safety. Singleton obviously does. I mean, and I'm not knocking them at all. It's just kind of crazy to still be calling Wright and Singleton's name. Even after all these years, I feel like we grew up with these guys, but I'm happy that they're back. And, when you look at how, young the linebacker room is in some aspects, having a guy like Wright, for example, is huge, and, Marquise Boston Trent. So I feel like there's a good balance of young players and veterans to kind of help them along.
Yeah, for sure. I think, it is crazy some of those guys are still hanging around, but
I don't blame them.
No, yeah. I mean, if you're Javin Wright or somebody, I mean, I don't know that the NFL is really banging down your door. So, good chance to improve your draft stock and get another year of NIL money. And so, yeah, we'll see how it all works out. No, no word yet on this house settlement. We should know more this week, and who knows? But I think it's probably going to work out the way Nebraska wants it to anyway. I think the main concern from a Nebraska perspective is like, these roster limits. And if those get grandfathered in, like, cool. Well, Nebraska can have 120 football players for the next 4 years. Like, I'm chill with that. I don't really care.
Yeah, I mean, It gives you depth, it gives you veteran experience, and it gives you options without having to make any difficult decisions, really.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting. Yeah, if the judge accepts it or whatever. I'm just so sick of the NCAA and all their, you know.
Yeah.
So I just whatever. I would like to see. I would. It would be funny though to see like that settlement rejected, and because I think that would further. I think that would, even though like it's like the NCAA is playing just a weird game because they do want this, I think, accepted, because if it's rejected, I think that their power is like going to totally completely disappear because states are going to just pass their own bills. And if it's crazy, if it gets even crazier than it is now, like how's the NCAA going to have any authority over anything? They won't. So I don't know. If I was the NCAA, I would want this to get done, because even though it's paying players directly, I still think it keeps them in some sort of like power
Yeah,
power
I agree.
position. But
I agree.
yeah, we'll see. What do you think about let's talk about this, since we don't have a lot going on in the chat today. What about the 16 team playoff proposal? What do you think about that? And the Big Ten, basically, if this proposal works out, if I can spell proposal right on here, probably not.
It's Saturday morning.
But if if the proposal that Ross Dellinger from Yahoo
Yep.
Sports becomes realistic, or whatever, realistic or actually happens, you'd have 16 teams overall. You'd have 4 berths guaranteed to the Big Ten and the SEC. Then you'd have 2 to the ACC and the Big 12. Then you'd have 1 group of 6 berth and then 3 at large berths. And what would be interesting is, so if you were a Big Ten team, they have this talk about a play-in tournament. So it would be like championship Saturday instead of just the Big Ten championship. It would be the Big Ten championship 1 versus 2, and then you'd have 3 versus 6 and 4 versus 5. And so like the top 2 teams would already be in the playoff. They would have berths clinched, and then the other 2. So if you won the 3-6 game or the 4-5 game, then you would be in. So that's how the Big Ten would get its 4 guaranteed berths, and then if you lost one of those games, you could still have an at-large chance. So that's basically the quick way I can sum it up. So what are your thoughts, and what do you think about it from a Nebraska perspective?
Well, I don't think it was an accident that Troy Dannon was named to the College Football Playoff Committee this week. And I just think it's funny. All this talk about parity with the College Football Playoff, this basically puts the Big Ten and the SEC in the driver's seat. So I don't know if from that perspective, if there is a ton of parity, it was always going to come down to the money and which conferences were the best. And right now, that's the Big Ten and the SEC. So I do feel bad for like the ACC who gets like 1 bid and stuff like that, and then the at-large bids and stuff. But I just think this gives more control to Big Ten and the SEC, and while that's not a bad thing, I feel like it kind of defeats the purpose of the playoff.
Yeah, I don't know. I know a lot of people are mad about the playoff, and I mean, I get about like the guaranteed berths, a little bit. I can understand it, but I think 16 teams would make a lot more sense. Just because then I think you'd get rid of this stupid seeding problem right immediately.
Right.
The double bye thing, or not the double bye, but the bye into the quarterfinal. Like now we don't have to worry about any of that stupid crap. We just seed the teams 1 to 16. Everybody gets a home game. Everybody gets a home game, and then every team. So like that's the thing is like, I mean, I'm sure that whoever Georgia last year, like, yeah, it was great. They got a buy into the quarterfinals, but they also missed out on a home playoff game. And it's like, I feel like, fans would like that. Plus also that's a big money maker for teams. Like if you can, like NFL teams make money when they host playoff games. So imagine, Michigan or Nebraska or whoever, like that's a hell of a lot of money that they can charge for those tickets. And so, I think that there's, that aspect of it, the TV side of it, you get 4 more games in the first round than you used to have, 4 more teams in there. But I mean, to be honest, from a Big Ten fan perspective, as a fan of a Big Ten team, like I'm cool with this thing, because the schedule is not always balanced in the Big Ten. It's never going to be. There's never going to be a balanced schedule. We saw that last year. Illinois and Indiana had pretty easy schedules. I mean, Nebraska had, not that, it was pretty favorable as well, but I just don't think that the Big Ten should be, handing out playoff berths based on who has the easiest schedules. And I think that that's how it's going to play out. And so this, to me, all you have to do is make it to that top 6. It has nothing to do with rankings. It doesn't matter about anybody's opinion. All you have to do is finish in the top 6 of your conference, and then you have a chance to play yourself in. And as a fan, I like that. I like that it's not about style points. It doesn't matter what you did in non-conference. It just matters how you played, because frankly, I mean, the Big Ten does have it is the best conference. The SEC is number 2, but right now the Big Ten is the best conference in college football. They've won the last 2 national championships. They kicked everybody's ass in the bowl games last year, and I mean, that's just the realities. The Big Ten and the SEC are better. And if you took Colorado, if you put Colorado in the Big Ten last season, they may not even make a bowl game, frankly. And they almost won 9 games. They did win 9 games last year. So like under this new system, they may have even gotten a playoff berth. So like the guaranteed berth, I understand why people are like, oh, it's destroying the regular season, but I don't really know that it is. And I think it's a pretty fair way to do it.
Well, it also doesn't help when you have 17,000 teams in the Big Ten. I mean, if you really wanted to complain about something, the conference realignment is the big problem with all of this. But I mean, I do miss the old conferences and stuff like that, and I don't think certain teams should be in the Big Ten, but it is what it is.
Yeah, man, I wish we could go back to the days of the actual Big Ten and the Southwest Conference and the Big 8 and the SEC, and we should have never crossed those lines. But it all started with the SEC championship game, man. The SEC ruined college football, and there's just no debate about that, because they had to have the little championship game, and then everybody else from there, because without the SEC championship game, we don't have the Big 12 championship game. And the Big 12 championship, the SEC championship game started it. And then, the Big 8 and everybody's like, oh, we got to have our 12 teams so we can play. And that's how you get Texas. And then that's the move. When Texas moved to the Big 12, that right there was the beginning of the end for, what we knew as college football in terms of like the regional traditional sport. After that, after Texas and Oklahoma merged with the big, I guess not even Oklahoma because they were in the Big 8. So just once Texas joined the Big 8, because nobody else that came with Texas really mattered. Like none of these other schools really mattered. It's about Texas. Texas A&M does matter to an extent, but when Texas made that move, it changed college football forever. And the Pandora's box will never be closed again.
Yeah, and I don't think that's a good precedent or good for the sport, but it is what it is. It's just interesting to see how much college football has changed over the past even 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know. Yeah, it's just getting pretty wild, but I don't care. I still love it the same as I'm not disillusioned by it, because it's like the reality. I just look at it. I mean, I look at people honestly. I mean, the transfer portal, I understand that, but the people who are getting mad about players getting paid and stuff, they always were getting paid. We just didn't know it. So, I mean, now just everything's above board. But I've said this a million times on here, but every single Nick Saban's own players, when he 2 or 3 years ago, he was like, oh, NIL paying players, blah, blah, blah. Literally players on his team, went and said he was lying. They're like, yeah, we got paid. Of course they got paid. I guarantee you every single player who played for Alabama, who played for Georgia, who played for Ohio State, who played for any of these programs over the last 20 years has been getting paid. Every single one of them. So let's just not act like, college football was this great amateur sport. It's always been about money. It's just now more out in the open.
I agree. And, now that, Nick Saban wants to start or join a committee and, to protect the amateurism of college sports, that's such a joke. But anyway,
I
went on that rant the other day. So
yeah. So anyways, let's see. Is there anything else we need to discuss? I know that the volleyball team is picking up a new Italian player, which is interesting because Penn State just got the a National Player of the Year candidate from Florida. So that'll be interesting for you volleyball fans out there. It's going to be Penn State, Nebraska, Wisconsin going to be battling it out, I think, for the Big Ten and for the national championship.
3 really good teams, so it'll be fun to watch.
But I do feel Caroline Jurevicius gets she got kicked to the curb at Nebraska, and now it's kind of happened to her again. So, but whatever.
I mean, again, it's just tough with with all the player movement and stuff like that. And it's just a part of college sports now.
Yeah, it's just you just never know who's going to come in and kind of take your spot. So anyways, I did think also it was funny that I don't know if you saw the Barstool Sports that had Iowa's the most toxic fan base in
I did,
college athletics.
I did, yeah. And you know what? I just looked this up because I recognize the last name Jurevicius, and her dad is Joe Jurevicius, who was a wide receiver for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, made the Sports Illustrated cover after they won the Super Bowl because of his dirt dog mentality. He wasn't necessarily an all-pro receiver, but the fans loved him for just like his passion and stuff like that. So that makes me feel a little bit old. That makes me feel super old. Up. Did we lose Chris?